Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. It's Friday, and as we often do for the end of the week, we have a relationship conversation. Now, hopefully, this will help make your relationship better. Or maybe someone will be sleeping on the sofa. I hope not. But tonight, we are asking the question, what's in a name? How do you address your partner or your significant other? Do you use pet names like honey, sweetie, boo, boo thang, sugar lump, daddy, bae, papi, papicito, mon petit chou? Yeah, we're trying to include everybody in this conversation. And is it a good thing or a bad thing? What are the relationship risks when you use pet names? So joining me to talk about this are clinical psychologist Dr. Roz Aker-Black and marriage and family therapist Tariq Omari Walton. Hey, everybody.
Hey, guys.
Okay, so
good to see everybody again.
Yes, indeed. Okay, I've got some fast facts for you guys because I looked up some information about this, and of course, there are statistics for everyone. And believe it or not, there was a study just last year, 2024, a global survey found that using an affectionate nickname with a romantic partner is done in 87% of relationships. Now, 79% of those surveyed believe an affectionate nickname strengthens a relationship. Babe, love, baby, honey, and dear are the top 5 affectionate names used globally. And babe, honey, and baby are the top 3 affectionate nicknames in English. But hold on. There is a particularly fascinating and unique bit of information on the other side of this. Sometimes couples use epithets to refer to their loved ones. Obviously, these are done in jest, but they include Captain Underpants, banana, stinker, booger ball, triceratops, and grumpy old git. Although I suspect these are not black people. I don't know, just spitballing.
Triceratops.
Yes,
who got time for all those syllables?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. You know, Roz, just off the top of your head,
yes,
and being the, you know, the wonderful Southern belle that you are, so I think I already know. What's your opinion about pet names for significant others?
I love the idea of a pet name for a significant other because I want the world to know that you're mine. And that's something that we share together. So, you know, me calling you baby in public or well, so first let me give the caveat because as you said, I'm a Southern belle.
Right.
So I have the tendency to call everyone sugar, right? But if I really rock with you, you my people, I call you Suge. You know, so
Really?
I listen it a little bit. Yeah. So I'm like, hey, sugar, hey, Suge, you know. But if you're my significant other, someone I'm sharing a life with, then I got to differentiate that from everyone else. So yeah, you get your own pet name. 100%.
Okay. And does the tone change? Are you saying it? The should come. You saying it with your chest? As
Sometimes, yeah.
Correct, right?
Sometimes
Depends on the moment.
So sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
So Tariq, what about you?
When I think about pet names, to me, it's just an extension of having nicknames with your family, with your friends, right? If you grow up with a nickname from that your parents gave you or your like, you know, friends give you, that's their way of connecting with you. That's the way to keep things really personal between the two of you, right? So when you get into a relationship and now you have a pet name, that's really just your nickname from your significant other. And it shows that it demonstrates that sense of closeness between the two of you, as well as lets people know, just like Dr. Ross said, that this is your person. So when you hear baby, you're not calling everybody baby. You're not calling everybody honey, right? That's specific to one person. So it just demonstrates that connection between you and your significant other.
But wait a minute. So are you sure? Because sometimes, but particularly for single people, and I've had some sister friends mention this to me. Some have mentioned it, and some have complained about this. When they meet a new guy, and in the very first phone conversation or on the first date, he hits her with a babe.
Mm.
And and sometimes that could be problematic because they say you don't know me enough to call me babe.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, see,
So
it's funny because again, going back to the nickname thing, I'm
Mhm.
known for giving nicknames along with the pet names. I'm gonna give you a million nicknames. So my wife has probably about a dozen nicknames I have on top of babe, right? Or baby, right? But I remember I was dating this sister years ago. We had only gone out maybe a couple of times, and I had already come up with a nickname for her. And she was like, "Stop that! Like, you don't know me like that to use it." I was like, "You know what? You're right. I don't know you well enough, and we're not connected enough for me to start giving you nicknames like that. That's just something that I did out of affection, and just out of humor." But you're
Mhm.
right. If I don't have that kind of relationship with you, if I don't know you like that well yet, yeah, you shouldn't be using anybody a nickname or a pet name. We don't have that kind of connection.
Yeah, well, that's why you didn't marry her, because
Oh, we're not even close.
Right.
she was already problematic.
Yeah, that didn't last very long
100%.
at all. Trust me.
100%.
Right?
But I do agree. I often laugh when I see people get offended by someone calling them a nickname or a pet name, and I get it. I get it 100% because
Right.
I have my nickname at home with my family is Rock, and so when I hear other people call me that's not my family, I'm like, yeah, I don't know me like that to be able to call me that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which is which may not be fair because I am a very personable person, so people feel like they may be closer to me
Right.
than what they actually are in my eyes, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
but I do get that in some sense how that can feel evasive for
Personal, right?
someone. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, so I typically in a relationship, I will say, is it okay if I call you this? Are you okay with me saying this?
Mm-hmm.
Like I just won't come out and say, baby, are you okay if I say this?
Right.
Because I just want to make sure it's okay. Because if I am approaching you with that type of a pet name, then that means that I see you a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah,
for me,
I agree with. Yeah, I do agree with that. Because I will say, and I know that on occasion she still listens. My college sweetheart from way back in the Flintstone days.
You ain't
You
lying.
know, the pet name that I had for her was Booby. It, and it had nothing to do with her physical attributes, but it just happened. And here we are decades later. If I see her at homecoming, I will still refer to her, as such,
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's kind of, I wouldn't even say it's a running joke, but it is just familiarity,
Right.
and so now there was no guy there with her, so I probably would not have done that had there been. Yeah.
And that was the point I was about to make. Would it be
Yeah, I know.
appropriate to still call your an ex a pet name, especially in front of their current
Yeah, we wouldn't do
significant
that.
other?
yeah,
That's not cool.
yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah.
I am, I would not have allowed that to be, a Freudian slip. But I do want to go back to something you said, Tariq. You have 12 pet names for your wife?
At minimum. Between pet names and nicknames, yeah. So it's just my wife. You met my wife.
Yes,
Right?
I
You met
have.
her. So you know
Wonderful
how
sister.
dynamic she is, right? So there's a lot of things that she does and a lot of things that she's into, and a lot for me to make fun of. So I usually give her a nickname associated with everything she does. So 12 might be a little short, actually.
Can you share? I'm really curious.
All right, so my wife is a personal trainer, right? And
Right.
she goes hard with her clients. So her name is Shandeth. I nicknamed her Shangilla the Gorilla Killer,
Wow.
right?
Okay.
Because she be taking them down. She be
Uh-huh.
taking them down. So that was like one of the early ones when I saw how she impacts her clients. Now they love her and they work for her, but she be putting them through the ringer. So yeah, that was one of them.
But you know what? And it's something that you said, and this is obviously on a personal note because all of us in this conversation know each other. But you said, how dynamic your wife is. Yes, but I also would take that a step further. The relationship you have with her is dynamic.
True.
And nobody knows obviously what happens behind the scenes, but she's still hanging in there with your crazy butt. And so as a result,
I keep her laughing, Harold. I got to keep her laughing.
Well, you know what? And I think that's a really important point. So whether you have 12 names, 24, 5, if those, Shangilla, the gorilla killer, once she picks herself up off the floor and stops crying because she's laughing so hard. But I think that really does help improve and bring more connectivity to the relationship, which is, kind of the next thing I wanted to ask, Roz, because pet names do bring people closer, don't they?
Yeah, as they should, because sometimes it's an inside joke between you and your partner. Sometimes it's like, to your point, Harold, I probably would have died laughing hearing you call your wife the gorilla killer. I'd be like, oh my God, that's hilarious. I love that. Like that's funny.
She had a t-shirt. She had a t-shirt made up. She had a t-shirt made up.
I love it. I love it. And I think it gives like this dialogue between you and your partner or you and your spouse of where, it's like your little inside joke, like we're the only ones that know we call each other this kind of thing, and the reasons why we call each other this. So I think it helps bring the emotional connection. I do.
So here's the other thing, and it's one thing for married folks, but I have also heard that some women would say, well, do you call all of the girls that, or all of the women that and what does that suggest? I mean, particularly if it's a really, really sweet name, Roz, but if the reaction is, oh, so you call all the women that player, what does that suggest, even if that is not the case?
So that's a bigger issue, unfortunately, Harold, that the perception that she has of this person calling her that, she doesn't really perceive them in a great light as someone that could be serious about her. And so sometimes women say that to try to gauge whether this guy is a player or not. Sometimes it's joking, but sometimes it's real, because let's be clear. I always say this. There are some men, I won't generalize and say all men, but there are some men that would just say whatever they think a woman wants to hear.
Interesting.
And unfortunately, fortunately, women have caught on to that. And so now we're holding men accountable for those type of things. And so in a situation like that, maybe she's just trying to hold him accountable, or maybe that's her personality. Maybe that's her playing personality. And I think you definitely would have to, what I would say, that's a great way to start communicating with each other, to figure out who this person is. And if that is part of their personality, is this someone that's always going to be combative, or is this someone who's just joking, right? And just trying to gauge that individual, because let's be clear. It's not like, and this is on both sides, men and women. It's not like we don't all go through relationship issues, right? We all struggle with that kind of thing. And so sometimes people get triggered, and we may not always know someone's trigger, right? So something that may seem simple to you may be very triggering for them. Let me give it, and I'll give you an example. What I mean by that. So, say for
Well, hold that
instance,
example. Hold that
oh,
example because I've
all
got to
right,
take a quick break. Don't forget that
I
because
will.
I'm
Okay.
really interested in the whole triggering thing, and I want Tariq also to give his response to it. Stay with us. You can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The Original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR-FM. This conversation continues on Sirius XM Channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about the use of pet names for your significant other. Is it a good or bad thing? My guests are clinical psychologist and resident sweetie face, Dr. Roz. I had to throw that in.
I love it. I love it.
Dr. Roz Aker Black, and marriage and family therapist and brother man from my motherland, Tyreek Omari Walton. Those are my pet names. First and last time you're going to hear that from me.
I appreciate that, man. It shows how close we are. Our brotherhood.
Exactly.
How we bonded.
That's
I
right. Yeah. I figured you were going to say that, Tariq. But Roz, before the break, you were talking about how pet names, particularly for people who are first beginning to interact, maybe even in the dating process, that may be triggering, and you may not know what triggers them. So go ahead, finish your point.
So a perfect example of that. So say for instance, an individual thinks they're in a relationship with someone, right? And this is why I caution people not to go snooping. But say for instance, they see that individual's text messages and he sent the same text to her the same day. So here's the thing. Here's what I've learned about cheaters. They are lazy
and not very creative.
And not creative. And so if it works with one woman, they think it works with all women, right? And so they will buy the same gifts. They will send the same text messages. They will do everything consistently the same across the board. And so that whole, I feel like you say this to every woman, that's her check-in to see, like, if you're that type of person. Now, that tells us two things, that may be a trigger for her because she's probably been in a situation where that has happened to her. Right. And so at that point, if you're smart and you're trying to still holler at her, then there are two ways that you can handle that. Jokingly play it off like, no, I'm not that kind of guy. Right. No, not me. You'll never get that from me. And then the other way was saying, oh, well, what would make you say something like that? Has that happened to you before? If you are really trying to engage to really get to know this young woman. And so that would be a way to start the conversation to see what kind of trauma may have happened in her past. And so it seems deep, but if you're really trying to if you really like her, then when you want to know those things, you want to know what may possibly be your trigger points.
And to add on to that, like Dr. Roz was saying, something she said earlier kind of sparked a few thoughts in me. The main thing is that if they're asking that question, it's because they want to know that they're special. They want to believe that they're special. Anytime you get into a relationship, that's one of the key points about being the individual with you now, is that I'm special, at least right now. I get you've been in relationships before. I can't take that away from you. I can't blame you or fault you for being in past relationships. I just want to know that as we are in this relationship together right now, that I am special to you in a way that no one else is special to you. So if you're using the same pet names either over and over again, relationship after relationship, or using it across the spectrum with everybody else that you're seeing, what you're telling me is that I'm really not that special, right? So I think that's one of the things that comes from behind that question. the thought that popped in my mind when she brought that up was that, do you remember the scene in Mo Better Blues where Spike Lee's talking to Denzel Washington's character? It's like, you remember we were in Paris, we're leaving out of Paris, and you want to get a gift for your two girls, and you bought the same dress. And I said, don't do that. And he said, hey, I'll bet you $100 that they'll never wear the same dress at the same night. You owe me $100. Because they both walked into the club that same night wearing the same dress. And so when you see that as a person who believes, hey, I even know that you're dating other people, but at least treat me special. But now you bought the same dress for somebody else, and I'm wearing the same dress on the same night, I don't feel special. So it's the same thing with pet names. If you're going to have a pet name for me, okay, I get you may be seeing other people, or you've had a past, you've been past relationships, but be creative. Consider who I am and tailor your pet name to me, and not just some blanket name that you use for everybody.
Yeah, and I will say, and Roz knows this when I'm thinking about just personal experience. Roz and I, we were at a social gathering a couple of weeks ago. Well, I know, just like she said in the beginning, when she sees me, she will say, hey, sugar. I'll say, hey, hun. But then I may call the next person that I also am familiar with, that I may not be as close to as I am, for example, to Roz. And I may also say, hey, hun. But again, those who are familiar realize that is a Harold thing. Okay. But with my daughter, and when I text her, other than my other nickname for her, because everybody knows her name is Maya, I call her Maya Moo. It has nothing to do with the fact that she looks or acts like a cow. It is just an alliteration of the consonant M, Maya Moo. But I also call her Sweetie. And that is not, and to be quite honest, I don't think I call anyone else Sweetie other than my daughter. So I do understand what you were talking about, Tariq, when you're talking about making someone feel, particularly special. But here's the other thing, and this is the man thing. So Tariq, you go to a restaurant. Let's say you go to a diner, not fine dining, but to a diner. And of course, the waitress Boom Boom comes over with all of with all of her big personality, physical traits. Let us just say that.
Gotcha.
She comes over and she calls and she says to you, hey, baby, can I take your order? There are some women, as you know, that you should have seen the look on Roz's face just there. She just did the side eye, Lord, that, some wives or girlfriends are like, did you just, yes, indeed. Don't call my husband baby. Don't call my man honey. But that they are just being friendly.
Right.
Your thoughts about that? How should men address that when you know that the waitress is not flirting? Although before you answer that, as the resident handsome man in this conversation, she may be flirting with you.
Harold, don't get me in trouble, man. I feel like this is a setup. This feels like a setup. Your wife is gonna see this later on. So I feel like
that's right. Yeah, and right? The gorilla killer will be killing you.
But I think it kind of goes back to something that Dr. Ross said earlier in terms of people's triggers, right? And why they have the triggers that they do. So if you're with a young lady and she gets triggered by that, if she's very sensitive to the fact that someone else is calling you dear or, hun, while they're serving you, then there's more to her story than what's actually happening in the moment, right? And so you're going to want to address that. You're going to want to talk about that, just like Dr. Ross said. Ask about the background and their experience in their relationships and why that's a sensitivity, why they were triggered by that. Because it's not really about the interaction that you're having. You understand, or most people understand that, hey, as somebody who's serving, especially if they share the same kind of face that you have, that they're going to be a little bit more personable. And again, this is about being personable. How are you connecting with the person that you're talking to? And so here they are being friendly and trying to connect with you. One, of course, not necessarily be flirtatious, but hey, they want to make sure they get a tip at the end. They want you to remember these interactions. And so you understand this is just them being personable. But if the person that you're with gets triggered by it, there's more to their story. And so you want to understand that and also let them know from your perspective, there's nothing wrong with this. Now, you may have a difference of opinion about that, but I'm not truly bothered by it. I'm curious as to why you are. So you want to understand more about them behind that kind of situation.
And in that case, it's one thing where it's somebody that you're dealing with and the relationship is new, but if you're a veteran married person, like such as yourself, and the waitress comes over and and says that, and I'm not talking about you specifically, but other people, there's no way to really head that off. When you're down in on Route 237 in South Carolina, and you stop at the diner, and the woman with the pin in her hair comes over and says, hey, honey, can I take your order? But your wife is triggered by that. And certainly there's got to be one of those, hey, honey, well, there's another pet name. Hey, honey, it's not a big deal.
Right. Well, the thing, too, is there's a couple things to take into consideration. One, of course, you're not going to say to the waitress, hey, don't you call me honey. I'm not your honey. You're not going to come off like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that shouldn't be an expectation.
Let us hope not.
Right? Well, that shouldn't be an expectation.
Yeah.
From the person you're with. They shouldn't expect you to, react in a way towards the other person to let them know, hey, that's not appropriate. Right? There's a whole, like I said, there's a whole other conversation that we had about that. But like you said, Route 237 in South Carolina, right? There's a cultural aspect to it as well. Right? So the way that you interact from all across this country, there's going to be a different way that people are having this kind of connection. So I remember back when I was living in New York, because New York is much more, you have this island flavor to it. So whether it's Latino, whether it's, West Indian, Black West Indian, people often, when they meet you and they greet you, you get a kiss on the cheek. You come down here, yeah, you might get a little side hug. So if you see somebody, you connect with them with a kiss on the cheek, oh, is there more going on here than I know? No, it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural difference. So even the pet names that somebody may approach you with in particular situations, like being at a diner, again, it might be a cultural aspect to it that you don't either understand or that you don't respect.
That is such an important point, and it was actually one of the other topics that I was going to talk about, and you beat me to it. But Roz, I think he is right. There are cultures and subcultures within not just our community, but many communities where you could step on one of those cultural landmines, even with a pet name, and get blown up in the moment.
Yeah, 100%. Funny story. That has happened to me.
Really?
Because I am, again, a very personable and affectionate person.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having a conversation with another young lady that I had done a radio show with. So I thought that we were on a friendly wavelength. And I was like, hey, girlie, how are you? She was like, I am not your girl.
Wow.
And I said, oh, I'm very sorry. I was like, I didn't mean any disrespect. I'm saying, sorry, I'm just a Georgia peach. That's just, we just talk. She said, but I'm not your girl. Please don't ever call me that again. I said, respect. I get it. No problem.
Mm-hmm.
But
we won't have you on that show anymore. But
yeah, it caught me off guard that I was just like, was I rude? Like I was questioning myself, like, was I rude? But then again, culture, like she wasn't Southern. Right. And so I had never given her a pet name or anything like that before. And so she could have just been having a bad day, So I think on some level, you just have to understand who you're talking to. But I thought we were on a level that we could kind of have that conversation. It's like, hey, girl. She was like, I ain't your girl. I was like, oh, my God, I feel like I had just been I don't know. I felt like I had just really, it was exactly, Tariq. It was like a huge rejection of friendship.
Yeah, my affection towards you, right? It's my way of being affectionate towards you,
Yeah,
right?
that's
And you're
all.
telling me I'm not your girl. Yeah, that's a rejection of my affection.
Yeah, exactly, exactly,
So
exactly.
here's the other thing. Pet names are one thing when they are used in private,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes there can be a slip in public where that inside joke may be misunderstood, and particularly if you are close to your significant other, there is no light between the two of you at all. You're just really, really tight, and you're at, the corporate business party, and you say to your significant other, "Booby, can you get me, some champagne?" I mean, gosh, that can be really, really embarrassing, because all
Yeah,
the heads start turning around and
right.
wondering you what did you call her? So I think, Ross, people need to be, particularly careful about
Yeah,
the use of pet names for your significant other, um, especially, if they may not necessarily be the safest mixed company word, and you're talking about her, after the love offering for the pastor in church.
right. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
But I do want
Sometimes
to
you do
ask.
have
I want
slips,
to ask
but
both of you about this, and we've seen this on social media, and I think it's really funny, because this is the other side of the coin, where you're so used to calling your significant other babe, for example, and then you call them by their given name. And I've seen this joke on social media where you're usually calling your significant other a babe, and then all of a sudden you say, Roz, and the person turns around and says, "My name is not Roz, my name is Babe."
That can
because of
happen.
what's happening here. If you calling me by
Yeah,
my
what,
government,
what
what's happening?
yeah, what did I do something wrong?
You trying to fight? You trying to fight me?
Right, right,
Exactly.
exactly,
What name you
exactly,
use? Who? You call me Tariq? What? Hold on.
exactly,
We
Is
don't do
that,
that
exactly.
in here. We don't do
Tyreek,
that in this
is
house.
that a thing in your household? I mean, if your wife all of a sudden, I mean, does she call you by a pet name, or does she call you Tyreek?
Oh no, she called me by a bunch of pet names as well. That's
Okay,
that's
so
something we
if
do
she
mutually.
calls your name,
What it's funny when she actually talks to other people about me and she uses my regular name, it throws me off a bit because I have a nickname that my entire family use, the grandkids use, my friends use, my really close friends use. It's Rico, right? It's Tariq Rico. And
mhm.
so when she actually says Tariq, it throws me off. I'm like, but I'm Rico. Hold on, what are you doing? Right. So when she's talking to other people and using my full name, it throws me off a little bit. But when she addresses me in the household, I don't think I've ever, in all the time we've been together, I don't think I've ever heard me call me by my full name. But if she did, I would definitely be thrown off and be like, what I do? What I do wrong? Right. So yeah, that would definitely be a different way of approaching me in the house than she has in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Roz?
Oh yeah, if you call me by my full name, then I'm in trouble. I done something. Like,
Right. Right.
what I do, what
Right.
I do, because it's full on baby, sweet thing. It's full on pet names. But if I,
Hmm.
if I hear Rosaneka Black, oh, excuse me, like, am I in trouble? What happened?
Right.
Yeah.
Especially if I hear Rosalind, I'm like, what? Why you?
Ooh.
You're not even calling me my nickname. You're calling me my full name, like my whole government name, sir. What's the problem? Yeah,
Hmm.
so that
Mm.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's weird. That's a
But
bit weird.
So
Harold,
here,
real quick, going back to what you were
go
saying
ahead.
too, just in terms of being in a public space and using the pet name or the nickname for your mate, and other people hear it, right? In the say professional space, it's also
Oh,
important for your mate to make it clear to their coworkers that there's a boundary there. That's the name my mate uses. You can't. Right? It's almost like being a teacher and your students find out what your first name is. Now I'm still Mr. Walton to you. All right, you're not calling me Tariq. There's still a boundary there. You may have the information, but there's a boundary, and there's only a certain
Right.
person who can use that name, and it's not you. So it's also very important for them to make that clear with their coworkers.
So,
I agree.
true story. I'm embarrassed to say, but this is a cautionary tale. This was many years ago. When I was married, and I was so used to referring to my wife at the time by the pet name, and had not used her given name in many months, and we were at a public event, and I went to introduce her, and I had a brain freeze because I was about to say
The pet name.
the pet name,
Mm-hmm.
and when I didn't, I forgot her first name.
Oh.
Oh, listen, it
And
happened.
how long did the marriage last after that?
Right. Well, you know.
A week and a half later, she was filing papers.
Yeah.
I know
Well,
where you
you
go now.
know.
You remember my
Go
name
ahead.
now.
Yeah, and I think that's something I will never forget. But I think this goes to the point that, particularly if all of the circles that you run in with your significant other, that they, whether it's family, whether it's friends, even if it is at church, and you are constantly using the pet name, and then on the rare occasion that you meet or associate with someone with whom you are not familiar, and then you go to introduce your significant other, and it's like, oh my God, what's your name again? You know, so I'm saying this,
As a warning.
you know, yeah, for all the folks. Roz, back me up here. Am I wrong here? You know, can we get a
Basically,
laugh
get a
out of
tattoo of their
that?
name on your hand. So if you ever have to wonder, you just look down at your hand and say,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
right? That helps. Keep it close.
That
Harold, how'd you forget her name, man? Come on, man.
Well,
What was
as I
going on
said,
that you forgot her name?
as I said, when you are using, when you are using a pet name from the
Constantly.
time that you wake up in the morning until the time you go to bed at night, when you call the phone, you know, it's Bay, or it's Honey, or it's, you know, you don't use that person's name. And when this happens every day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, month after month after month, and it was a brain fart, you know, as they say. But I will also say it did require a bit of explanation when we got home.
oh,
I
I'm
bet it did.
sure. I'm
You know,
sure.
but it was logical, Roz. Come on, give me a break.
You would have
No breaks for you, man. No
You
breaks.
would have been better off just saying wifey. Like you would have instead
Wow.
of you would have been at least you're acknowledging that she's your wife, right? Well, my goodness, forget my name. Good Lord.
Nah, Harold, and if that ever happens to you again, just walk away. All right, walk away, act like you got to sneeze, right? Go get yourself together, right? You have a bathroom emergency, whatever it is, get out. All right, don't get stuck in that situation again. Get out
Oh my
immediately.
God.
Yes, or have that conversation with yourself in the car before you get to the venue.
Yes.
Just say her name over and over again in your head.
Her name is this. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Well, you know, like I said, that was a long time ago. Anyway, so we have spoken about, you know, some of the upsides to pet names, but is there the danger, Roz, of overuse? Well, we just spoke about overuse, but perhaps lack of sincerity when it comes to the use of pet names?
I think so. In terms of like, it depends on it depends on your personality, right? Are you a manipulative person, right?
Mm.
And so if you know that calling me this certain name, like sexy babe or something like that, is going to get me to do whatever you want me to do, and you're using that, then that lacks sincerity all the time. So you have to be careful. Like, is this a manipulation tool? Like, babe, don't do that. Or you don't do that. Is this person manipulating you? And it lacks the sincerity. And so that, again, that's a moment when you have communication. It's a moment where you communicate about the idea of, that feels like you were just trying to get your way in that moment. It didn't feel sincere. And I'm a big proponent of saying what you need in a relationship, and saying what doesn't feel good to your relationship, because I think it's very unfair when we expect our partners, our spouses, to read our minds, because no one can do that, right? And so you're walking around with a grudge, or you're walking around upset, and it's so unfair to your partner and to your relationship. And so I think you need to use your words, like we learned when we were in kindergarten, and say what the problem is, right? And say, that did not feel good to me when you said this, particularly if you're doing this in front of other people to kind of like trying to prove a point. Like, that did not feel good that you were trying to manipulate me in that way.
Which in some cases, I was having this conversation with a colleague prior to doing this particular show, and she was saying that she prefers that her significant other refer to her only by her name, and not
always,
and not use a pet name.
She say why?
Like you said to me, I like to feel special.
Yeah.
Like I want to know.
Yeah. But certainly, and I think that argument was, just call me by my name because my name is special. So if her name was Bomquisha, there is only one. So,
right.
But Tariq, I'll let you have the final word on pet names for those who are still struggling with it.
I was gonna say, I know we were joking earlier about how if you're used to hearing a pet name from your mate and they use your full name or your real name, that it kind of throws you off because you usually feel like you're in trouble. Well, if I am in trouble, please use my full name. Don't use the pet name in that moment, because that can become a little emotionally confusing, right? On one hand, you're using a pet name that's usually used for affection at a time when you're actually upset with me, right? So that may be a good time to switch from the pet name to my real name, just in that moment, right? But also, just keep in mind, when you think about pet names, remember, this is kind of like shorthand too. That's why we said triceratops earlier with all those syllables, right? You want to make sure that, typically that's why you have babe, usually 1 or 2 syllables. It's a shorthand that you use to communicate with your mate as well sometimes, right? I don't want to have to say your full name. My wife has 4 syllables in her name. I don't need to say all that just to get your attention for something I'm doing in the kitchen, right? So, hey, baby, it's easier. It's a nice little shorthand to have.
I like that. I think that's a great way to end this conversation. Dr. Roz Aker-Black, Tariq Omari Walton. I told you, no more pet names for both of you all. Just one.
Thank you.
There you go.
I love you, brother, but nah, that's not what we're doing.
That is the Daily Draw for Friday, August 8th. For News Director Renee Nash, I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.